All right, let's get right into it. We've got a massive showdown on our hands, Silicon Valley ethics versus the Pentagon. Yeah, it's a big one. And this story, it's literally drawing a red line for the entire future of AI. So let's unpack this. So check this out. For the first time ever, a huge American tech company gets blacklisted by the US military. And you might be thinking, okay, spying, faulty gear? Nope. They got banned for being too safe. Sounds crazy, right? But believe me, that is exactly what went down. And that just sets up the huge question we're going to tackle here. How in the world does one of the most advanced, safety-first AIs on the planet get slapped with a national security risk label? Seriously, how does that happen? Let's get into it. Okay, so it all started with this official and honestly pretty shocking declaration from the highest levels. The US military straight up banned the AI known as Claude, which is made by a company called Anthropic. And this wasn't just some slap on the wrist. The order was severe, effective immediately. Any company, and we are talking about tens of thousands of companies that does business with the military, was forbidden from working with Anthropic. I mean, this is basically a commercial death sentence. And the whole thing blew up like overnight. So you're probably asking, how did it get to this point? Well, to really get the ban, we've got to rewind the clock just a little bit, to the days right before it happened. Because this wasn't some slow burn disagreement. No, this was a full-on, rapid-fire conflict. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's wild. You've got a tense meeting on a Tuesday, then the Pentagon drops an ultimatum with this super specific deadline, Friday, 5:01 p.m., and you guessed it, when that deadline came and went and the company didn't budge, bam, the ban came down that very evening. The pressure must have been absolutely insane. So what was the big demand that sparked this whole thing? It was this. The Pentagon wanted Anthropic to rip out its internal safety guardrails. They demanded full, unrestricted access to Claude's AI models for what they called all lawful purposes. Now, from the military's point of view, these built-in safety features were a huge problem. Secretary Hegseth even went public, accusing Anthropic of trying to strong-arm the military. His argument was pretty simple. A private company shouldn't get to tell us how to handle national defense. And that pressure? It was coming from the very, very top. President Trump himself weighed in, and the message couldn't have been clearer. Either you give in, or you're completely cut off from the entire defense world. But you know what? Anthropic? They didn't blink. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. Why? Why would any company risk it all to stand up to the Pentagon like this? Well, the answer is pretty fascinating. It's all because of something they call the AI Constitution. And look, this AI Constitution, it's not just some mission statement on a poster they can edit whenever they want. No, these are hard-coded ethical red lines baked right into the AI's core programming. It is literally designed from the ground up to stop people from using it in certain ways. And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the conflict. You've got the Pentagon demanding unrestricted access, but on the other side, you have Anthropic's AI Constitution with two very specific, totally non-negotiable red lines. You can't use it for mass domestic surveillance, and you absolutely cannot use it in fully autonomous weapons. You know, the kind that make life or death calls without a human being involved. Anthropic's CEO, a guy named Dario Amodei, he laid it out really clearly. He said, look, we believe in using AI to defend the country, but taking humans out of the loop on lethal decisions, that's just way too dangerous with the tech we have right now. It was a risk they were simply not willing to take. And then things got even more interesting. In a pretty surprising move, Anthropic's biggest competitor, OpenAI, actually stepped up and publicly backed them. So just like that, this wasn't one company's battle anymore. It blew up into an industry-wide standoff about who actually gets to decide the ethical rules for AI. But here's the thing. This ban creates this huge ironic problem for the military. Because even though the ban was immediate, they can't just, flip a switch and turn Claude off. They've become super dependent on the very same tech they just put on the blacklist. I mean, to really get how high the stakes were for Anthropic, let's talk numbers. They walked away from a defense contract that could have been worth $200 million. They chose their principles over a gigantic paycheck. But what's so fascinating is that the military stakes in this whole thing, they're just as high. And this all happened so fast. It was only back in June of 2024 that Claude even got deployed on classified networks.
This was a huge deal. It made Anthropic the first and only frontier AI company, one of the ones making the most powerful new models, to get that deeply integrated. So it was new, but that integration went deep fast.
And if you want proof of just how dependent they'd become, it's hidden right there in the ban itself. The order included a 6-month phase-out period. Now that's basically the Pentagon quietly admitting, hey, we can't just uninstall this thing like an app on our phones. It's already become way too important for critical operations. Because just look at what they're using it for. We're not talking about a fancy chatbot here. U.S. Central Command has been using Claude for real-deal intelligence work. We're talking evaluating data, helping to identify targets, running super complex combat simulations. It's been woven right into the fabric of modern military strategy. Okay, so let's zoom out. Why does this high-level fight matter to you and me? Well, because it pulls back the curtain on something really fundamental about all AI, even the stuff you might be using every single day. See, that same AI constitution that the Pentagon hated, it's a huge reason why models like Claude are often considered more reliable and predictable for things like creative work or professional tasks. It all comes down to a basic trade-off. When you build in those safety limits, yeah, you might lose a little bit of raw power, but what you gain is consistency and reliability. And what this whole conflict might be doing is forcing a kind of great divergence in how AI is developed. We could be looking at a future where AI splits down two different roads. On one path, you have commercial AI, the kind we all interact with, built with all these ethical guardrails. And on the other path, you've got military and government AI, developed with absolutely none of those restrictions. Ultimately, this entire thing boils down to one massive question that this situation is forcing all of us to face. And honestly, it might just be the defining question of the entire AI era. Who should get to decide the ethical limits of AI? Is it the creators, the people who build it, who understand the risks and try to bake in those safeguards? Or is it the users? Especially when that user is the military, arguing that they need total access to protect national security. There's no easy answer here. This story is definitely not over, and how we answer that question, well, it's going to shape everything.